Alright, so we did the basis of hypothesis testing, wherein we said that how one-tail hypothesis may work, how two-may hypothesis may work, what is the acceptance and rejection region for hypothesis. Before we move on, let's try to get a difference and similarity sort of between research hypothesis and statistical hypothesis. So basically what we say that there are two kind of hypothesis. One is called as research hypothesis and another is called as statistical hypothesis. Now, research hypothesis is mainly the research statement or the research problem that we are taking into consideration, whereas statistical hypothesis is the analysis part wherein we apply the statistical tools and techniques in order to find whether what we are putting up in research hypothesis is abiding by the sample that we are taking up or not. So, to make it in a formal manner, we have the research hypothesis is the conjecture or supposition that motivates the research. So, what you are framing that is called as the research hypothesis. For example, a public health nurse may have noted that certain clients responded more readily to a particular type of health education program. A physician may recall that there is certain medicine or measures that work more effectively than any one of them alone. Then the research projects often result from the desire of such practitioners to determine whether what they are thinking or what they are observing is right or not. And research hypothesis lead directly to statistical hypothesis. So once you are able to make a research hypothesis, therein after directly this leads to the statistical hypothesis. And this is nothing but mathematical aid that we'll be making use of to find whether what we are thinking, whether what we are observing, whether we are hypothesizing, that is true as per the sample that we have collected or not. So, to define statistical hypothesis is the hypothesis that are stated in such a way that they may be evaluated by appropriate statistical techniques. Now, once the difference between the two is clear, then after this, we can think of the two as a culminated procedure because ultimately the statistical hypothesis that we are adopting are leading towards a research hypothesis that we have taken up or quoted in our research. So when we culminate the research hypothesis and statistical hypothesis, we can zero down our entire concept of data and calculations in a procedure which is called as 10 steps of hypothesis. So, these 10 steps of hypothesis should be taken care of in the result or calculation or analysis part when we are taking up in any research paper. So we are moving on to 10 steps of hypothesis testing. Now, the very first step that has its base in this research hypothesis is the data. So we have dealt with lot of information on data, what types of data are there, how to collect the data, from which sources data can be collected. So when we are conducting 10 steps of hypothesis testing, then the first step for hypothesis testing is to state how your data is. Whether your data is quantitative data, whether your data is qualitative data, whether it's a Likert scale data. So quantitative, qualitative, nominal, ordinal, etc. this comes under the data step of the 10 steps of hypothesis testing. Now, once this data is taken care of, then another thing that is culmination of the two hypotheses is the assumptions. So, whenever you are doing research, do mention what are the assumptions that you are taking into account. So if you're taking up research, then what under what conditions you are taking up, that can become assumptions. And when you are conducting statistical inference, so in this we can take up whether the parent population is normally distributed or not. Then if we are comparing the means of two population, then in that case we may take up whether the variances of the two population are assumed to be equal or non-equal. So for example, if we are comparing the average closing price of two stocks, then in that case, if the stock closing price of one of the data set that we are taking up is in say hundreds and the other one is in thousands, so we obviously there will be the difference in the mean because there will be difference in the variances. So we should take into consideration whether we should take up the populations to be similar or not, etc. So these all comes under assumptions of statistical hypothesis. Apart from that, you must quote the assumptions or the situation in which you are conducting the research hypothesis. So parent population is normal, variance is equal assumed, etc. The third point under consideration of 10 steps is framing of your hypothesis. So we have discussed this in detail that there are two sort of hypothesis testing. One is two-tail testing, wherein suppose we need to test whether the average value is mu is equal to mu naught in H1, which is alternative hypothesis, which is sometimes also written as HA. Is this or not? Then this is two-tail test. So this is called as right tail test. This is called as left tail test. And this is called as two-tail hypothesis testing. So after framing H0 and H1, that is null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, which relates to say testing of some parameter or non-parametric test. Accordingly, we frame H0 and H1 and taking into consideration two tail, right tail, left tail, we seek the solution to. Now, in this, keep one thing in mind that hypothesis is not a general proving of the statement. We are not proving that this is a universal law. We hypothesis testing is merely indicating whether the hypothesis is supported or it is not supported by the available data. So that means it may happen that you are taking a particular sample, then that particular sample may support this sort of hypothesis that it is in favor of H0, and some sample may not support H0. So it all depends on the sampling that you are taking into consideration. So the sample is the point through which we can find that whether what we are trying to observe, what we are trying to observe is correct or not correct. Then, once this hypothesis is being framed, next important part that comes into picture is called as test statistic. Now, this is completely on the grounds of statistical concepts. So, we'll be just taking up quickly what test statistic mean. Test statistic basically mean that under the hypothesis that we are taking into consideration, wherein we take into account null hypothesis to be true unless and until it is not proven wrong. Then, for testing that, we take up a mathematical measure which is called as test statistic. So, for example, if we are to compute or to find whether mu is equal to 10 or not, for example, we are taking up, say, the Coca Cola filling bottles, and we want to find whether the liquid in the Coca Cola bottle is 750 ml or not. Then, in that, we can go with a test which is called as Z test, and we can compute the test statistics by x bar, where x bar is the sample mean that we are taking up, minus mu, where mu is being studied at mu naught or 750 in our case, divided by sigma by root n. Now, this sigma by root n is basically called as standard error of mean. So, if you remember, we took up the concept of converting a normal x to z. And when we were standardizing z, therein we were writing it as x minus mu upon sigma. Now, in taking up the mean hypothesis, we are not writing sigma in the denominator. The reason being that this is not pertaining to x distribution. We are talking now of x bar. X bar is mean of the observations that we are taking into account. And when we plot x bar on x and take their probability on y and assume it to be normal distribution, then the variance of that distribution is sigma by root n and not sigma. Sigma is the standard deviation of the population, whereas sigma by root n is the standard deviation of the sampling distribution under consideration. So, this sigma by root n is called as standard error of mean, or it is standard deviation of the sampling distribution that we are taking into account. Now, depending on our cases, like if we have sample size to be greater than 30 and sigma is known, which is usually not known in case of hypothesis, then we can make use of distribution or the test statistic as z. And if we want to draw this, then depending on one tail or two tail, the shape of z distribution is this. And then, so this x-axis is the z-axis, and then we plot this as normal distribution of variance, and this shape that comes into account is the sigma by root n, and the center value is basically mu or mu naught in our case. Then we compute this, which is z distribution as per z distribution, and then we calculate and then take up the step further. But in this case, if sigma is unknown, then we cannot make use of z distribution. The other distribution that comes into account is t distribution, which is again x bar minus mu naught, but now we have it is s by root n. Now this s is not the population standard deviation. This is the sample standard deviation. So we have s square is 1 upon n minus 1 summation xi minus x bar whole square. So this is the major difference between population variance and the sample variance. Sample variance is computed by dividing it by n minus 1. That is, we take into account the concept of degree of freedom. Whereas if we are taking up sigma or sigma square, then here we will be dividing it by 1 by capital N. In fact, if we are taking into consideration the Excel software also, then in Excel also var.s compute sample variance, or simple var computes the sample variance, whereas var.p take into account the population variance. So, with this, we are coming on to one more concept, and that is called as degree of freedom concept. So, to understand the degree of freedom concept, suppose we have 10 toffees and 10 students, and each student is taking up or is asked to choose the toffee one by one. Then, if we consider this scenario, then the first child who come has the option of choosing any toffee among the 10 choices. Second will have 9 and so on. But the last student or the last child will be not having any option but to choose the leftover part. So that means out of 10, 9 were having the choice to free move. But 10th was not having that choice. So that concept is called as degree of freedom, that is to say how many variables have the independent movement. And with this, we take up T distribution, and T distribution rests its case on degree of freedom concept. Rest T distribution shape is similar to Z distribution. Plot T distribution over here. The difference between T and Z is T is little bit thicker in tails as compared to normal distribution, and second T is flattened as compared to normal distribution. So this is T distribution. T distribution is symmetrical, it has mean as 0, but it has more variance as compared to Z distribution. So wherever we are taking up the case that sigma is unknown, there we can employ or we can make use of T. Suppose we need to find whether the average male height is this figure or not. Then for that, we may take up T distribution, or if n is greater than 30, then T and Z approximately reaches the same value. So we can either employ Z or we can employ T in that case. Now, moving on to more test statistics. Suppose we have to find whether the variance of the population that we are taking up into account is sigma naught square, that is again a particular value, or not. Again, it can be one tail or two tail. So suppose again taking up the example of Coca-Cola filling bottle, suppose we want that we can tolerate the variance of 10 ml, 750 plus minus 10 ml. So that 10 ml is basically sigma naught square, which we are trying to identify. Now, when we are considering the variance, therein we cannot make use of normal distribution because of the simple fact that normal distribution is left tail and right tail, as in it is both positive and negative. It can take positive values as well as negative values, but the matter of fact is sigma square can never be negative. So we cannot take up Z distribution as it is. For that, we take up a distribution which is called as chi-square, which is nothing but square of standard normal variate. So this chi-square distribution is computed using this statistic n minus 1 s square by sigma square, and it is being computed under sigma naught square. So this is how we compute the test statistic for comparison of population variance to a particular stable value, or basically hypothesizing whether the population variance is particular value or not. Now, this is called as one population variance computing. And remember, again, we'll be taking up degree of freedom concept into it. And again, chi-square is dependent on degree of freedom. So we'll be taking up degree of freedom for this particular chi-square as n minus 1. As we'll move on to chi-square applications, we'll take what is degree of freedom for those cases. Now, F test or F statistic is used for comparison of two population variances. That is, suppose we want to identify whether the variation in the liquid filling is same in Coca-Cola bottles and Pepsi bottles or not? Then in such case, we compute F statistic, which is S1 square by sigma 1 square divided by S2 square by sigma 2 square, where S1 and S2 are the sample variances computed from population 1, that is the population of Coca-Cola bottles, or the sample of Coca-Cola bottles, and the second is the sample of the Pepsi bottles. So we may take up equal sample size for both the population, or we may take up different sample sizes. So if we are taking n1 as a sample size for population 1 and n2 as a sample size for population 2, then this F is computed at numerator degree of freedom and denominator degree of freedom, which is F n1 minus 1 and n2 minus 1. So this is the degree of freedom that we take into consideration while we are computing F statistic. Now, this is one part of the study. Many a times in our questionnaire, we need to compare the means, and we are taking up the first simple case wherein we are ought to compare whether the average value of two population is same or not. Again, we can rest on one tail and two tail depending on the situation we are taking into consideration. Now, for this, if we are dealing only with two comparisons, two population comparisons, then it is advisable to make use of T or Z distribution than to ANOVA, because ANOVA is little bit complicated while performing the calculations, be it CPU time or be it the normal calculations that we are taking into account. When you are comparing the means of two population, in that case, we can have Z statistic depending again on the cases. Z statistic will be x1 bar minus x2 bar minus mu1 minus mu2 upon under root of sigma 1 square by n1 plus sigma 2 square by n2, where sigma 1 square is the population variance of first population, sigma 2 square is the population variance of the second population, n1 is a sample size corresponding to first population, n2 is a sample size corresponding to second population, x1 bar is the mean of the sample which is being taken from population 1, and x2 bar is the mean of the sample taken from population 2. But again, in this case, sigma 1 and sigma 2 are assumed to be known, and that is why we are making use of Z. But if it is not known, then again we switch over to T distribution. Now, when we are computing T distribution, then under the assumption that the two population variances are equal, that is, the two populations are similar, we can compute again the test statistic using the formula x1 bar minus x2 bar minus mu1 minus mu2 sp square by n1 sp square by n2, and this sp square is called as pooled sample variance. And again, this is T, so T depends on degree of freedom, and we have n1 minus 1 from x1 population, n2 minus 1 from x2 population. So we'll be having the degree of freedom will be n1 plus n2 minus 2. And if we take into consideration the sp square value, sp square is the pooled variance which is given by n1 minus 1 s1 square plus n2 minus 1 s2 square divided by n1 plus n2 minus 2. This will be plus sp square by n1 plus sp square by n2. So this becomes the pooled variance, and we can compute this when we take into consideration that the two population variances are similar. And then we calculate the things. Then the last thing that we are taking, we'll be taking up chi-square later, application of chi-square majorly later. Last comes ANOVA. ANOVA takes into consideration the ANOVA takes into consideration the comparison of two or more than two population means. And under H1, it will be any one of them is not equal. So when we are taking into consideration comparison of more than two population means, we can definitely take it for two also, but procedure is complex. So we avoid and we go for T distribution. In such case, we run ANOVA. That is, we employ the technique of analysis of variance. Please do take into consideration that ANOVA do not compare the variances for more than two population. ANOVA is a technique which is used to compare the means of multiple population averages. So basically, once we have taken up the statistic part, then we move on to fifth step, and fifth step is basically called as the distribution for the test statistic. And the distribution of test statistic we have written along with the formulas that we were taking up. So like this is the distribution of this statistic. So this statistic is being distributed over this distribution. So that means the step 4 is being clubbed with step 5, which is taking up test statistic plus distribution of test statistic. Now after these step come, after this step we have step number 6, which is called as decision rule. So this decision rule is dependent on the level of significance. That is, suppose we are taking level of significance to be 5%. So if we have Z distribution, then the decision rule will become that if our calculated value is coming up within this region, that is within this 95% region or probability 0.95 region, then we will not reject the null hypothesis. And if our X bar is coming in the rejection zone, that is in alpha by 2 and alpha by 2 zone, then we will reject H naught. So this is how we frame up the level of significance based decision rule. Once this decision rule is set, next comes the calculation. So again we are mixing up two steps, that is calculation and the statistical conclusion. 7 and 8 step becomes the calculation and statistical conclusion. So what do we mean by this? It simply takes into account that now we'll take up suppose Z calculated and we'll compare it with Z tabulated. So if our Z calculated is well within the range of the decision rule, so this is Z tabulated, this is Z tabulated as per the decision rule that we are taking into account, and suppose our Z calculated is lying in this region. And in this region, if our Z calculated is lying, then we say that we do not have enough evidence to reject H naught. However, if the Z calculated is lying in these regions, then we say that sample do not support the null hypothesis, and therefore at 5% level of significance or alpha percent level of significance, we should reject H naught. Then step number 9 is the final conclusion. That is the research problem which we are taking into account. We are concluding that on the basis of the statistical conclusion, and we are supporting it with p-value concept. So p-value is basically the probability associated with the acceptance of your null hypothesis. So what do we mean by p-value? P-value is basically computed from one tail direction, and p-value is computed from extreme right or extreme left. So suppose we have one tail distribution, one tail test, and this is my do not reject zone, and this is my reject zone. Then in that case, if my x bar is somewhat over here, then we know that if we are taking alpha percent, say alpha to be 5%, then this area is 0.05. So if now what we do, we compute our p-value from extreme right. Definitely the probability value from extreme right for this particular sample will be actually this area. Now this area will be greater than 0.05. So that means my x bar is crossing that threshold of 5% level. So that means if we have p-value is greater the p-value, better is the result. P-value should be a big number, a big probability number. So if we are having p-value near to 0, so that means we are in a position of rejecting H naught. And if p-value is close towards zero point 0.5 in case of two tail and 1 in case of one tail, then we say that we have the chances of not getting H naught being rejected. So, this was the way by which we take into consideration a general follow up on the hypothesis procedure, and then let us quickly take up the cases one by one so that we can find out how actually to go about hypothesis testing, and then we'll switch over to chi-square test, and then we'll take up ANOVA case. Alright, so let us start with the starting of hypothesis testing questions. So the first case that we are taking up is Z statistic. Or basically, we will be taking up the case wherein we will be comparing the population mean. So if we need to test whether mu is equal to mu naught or less than, greater than, or not equal to, so this is what the case we are taking into account. So for that, let us take up a question. So this is the question which says, in an attempt to determine why customer service is important to managers in UK, researchers surveyed managing directors of manufacturing plants in Scotland. One of the reasons proposed was that customer service is a means of retaining customers. On a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being low and 5 being high, survey respondents rated their reason more highly than any of the others, with a mean response of 4.30. Suppose US researchers believe American manufacturing managers would, would not rate this reason as high and conduct a hypothesis test to prove this theory. Take alpha to be 0.05, data which is gathered, and the following results are obtained as follows. Use these data and the 8, or basically there are 10 steps of hypothesis testing to determine whether US managers rate this reason significantly lower than 4.30 ascertained in UK. Assume that population standard deviation is 0.574. So if we take up this case, that means what they are talking of is whether your H naught is 4.30, mu is 4.30. So we are not taking into account the entire steps, that data is ordinal data which is being rated from scale 1 to 5, etc., etc. What are the assumptions that we are not taking into account? We are just taking up the statistical part of the question, and that statistical part says whether we need to determine whether it is lower than, significantly lower than 4.30. So that means my research hypothesis will be this. So if you want to make it statistically correct, you can put in greater than sign over here so that it represents the exhaustive cases. And then they are saying that take alpha to be 5%. So it's a one tail test, and along with this, they are given that sigma is 0.574. Assume sigma to be 0.574. Now, how to go about this test? First, plotting the graph so that it gives an idea how to take about the question. So this is the rating that we are talking of, and this is the normal plot that we are taking up. Now the question is saying that it's a one tail test, and I need to find whether it is greater than equal to 0 or less than 4.30. That means it's a left tail test wherein this becomes my h1, or do not reject reject h0, and this becomes my do not reject h0. So I need to find whether my x bar is lying in this region or this region. So all we need to do is we need to compute x bar, and x bar can be definitely computed by summation xi by n. So formula is summation xi by n, where n is sample size. So what is the sample size? Is that given in question? Let us see. One of the reasons respondents. All right. So sample size we need to count 3, 3, 6, 3, 9, 3, 12. So this way we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30, and 32. So we have n is 32. So sample size is 32. We can compute x bar summation xi by n, and then the test statistic, we'll take up z calculated. We are writing it as zc. Z calculated will be x bar minus mu naught mu upon sigma by root n. So we'll be having z calculated. We'll be computing x bar minus 4.30 divided by sigma. Sigma is 0.474 divided by under root 32. So now if we take up the calculation part, we have, let us take up figures. So we can definitely calculate this by pen and paper, but let us copy it over here. All right, so all right, so this is the data set. The order doesn't matter, and we need to compare the we need to compute the average 4.625. So let me also count. Right, so this is the x bar that is coming up. So x bar is coming out to be 4.15625. Now we have hypothesized mu. Hypothesized mu is 4.30. 4.30. So our z calculated will be equal to x bar minus mu upon sigma by root n. Sigma is given to be 0.574. 0.574 sigma by root n, square root of n. So that means z calculated is coming out to be minus 1.41668. So we have This is coming out to be minus 1.416 or 2, basically 1.42 approximately. Now what we need to do is we need to compute this level of significance at 5%. So that means if we are having Excel with us, so we'll take up norm S norm SINV, and let us take up 0.05 area. This is coming out to be minus 1.65, minus 1.645, right, minus 1.645. So that means this is minus 1.645. And our computed value is somewhat over here. This is what we are computing, minus 1.42. So we have that R calculated value. This is Z tabulated value. And we have that R calculated value is lying within the H0 zone. So the sample do not give enough evidence that the mu of the population is less than 4.30. So this is how we proceed on. Okay, so we have R Z calculated is greater than Z tabulated in this case, so we do not reject H0. And if you want to compute the p-value, so p-value is given by norm S DIST, normal standard DIST, and Z. And let's take absolute of this value, that will be better. Oh no, we can directly take up this Z calculated, norm S DIST. So our p-value is coming out to be 0.078. So that means correspondingly we have p-value is coming out to be 0.078, which is greater than 0.05. So that means now how to give about the conclusion. We say that as per the data gathered, the sample do not give enough evidence that US managers rate is significantly lower than 4.30 ascertained in the UK. Now same way, if we have a t-test question, so we have this question released by the US Department of Agriculture shows that the average size of farms has increased since 1940. In 1940, the mean size of a farm was 174 acres. By 997, the average size was 471 acres. Between those years, the number of farms decreased, but the amount of tillable land remained relatively constant. So now farms are bigger. This trend might be explained in part by the inability of small farms to compete with the prices and costs of large scale operations and to produce a level of income necessary to support the farmers' inability of small farms to compete with the prices and costs of large scale operations and to produce a level of income necessary to support the farmers' desired standard of living. Suppose a researcher believes that average size of farms has now increased from 1997 mean figures of 471 acres. To test this notion, she randomly sampled 23 farms across United States and ascertained the size of each farm from country records. The data gathered is given below. At 5% level of significance, test the hypothesis. Assume that the number of acres per farm is normally distributed. So that means 471 acres, average size has now increased. So that means in this, we need to test now whether mu is 471 or the research hypothesis will be, the statistical hypothesis will be mu is greater than 471. If you want to make it comprehensive as per statistical mathematical tool or mathematical concept, we can state that H0 and H1 are like this. Now, in this, we are given n is less than 30. So, and sigma is unknown. So that means we can employ T statistic for it, and T statistics is x bar minus mu upon s by root n. And we know that this will follow T n minus 1 degree of freedom. So they are saying that we have 23. So n is 23, number of observations are 23. So that means degree of freedom in this case will be 22. So how to go about it? Let us take up the calculation in Excel again. I'm just taking Excel as a calculator. That's it. Otherwise, SPSS or Excel can give the direct results too. So we have, this is the data set. So we have 23 observations. Then we need to calculate average. We need to compute X bar and variance of the sample. Sample variance or sample standard deviation. So X bar will be average of these numbers. So this is average. This will be var. You can either use var or var s or STDEV, standard deviation. We are not using T because it's not population. We need to divide it by n minus 1. Alright, so we are getting x bar is this, standard deviation is this, then hypothesized mu. Hypothesized mu is given to be 471. 471. That means now T calculated value will be equal to x bar minus mu upon s by root n. So we have s divided by square root of, let us take up count So this is T calculated. T calculated is coming out to be 2.838. So this is T calculated, which is coming out to be 2.838. So we have T calculated is coming out to be 2.838. Alright. Now again, if we take up the plot, and it is very similar to T. This is greater, so this is do not reject H0 zone, and this is reject H0 zone. Alright, so our calculated value is coming out to be 2.838. Okay, now let us take up T tabulated value also. So T tabulated will be TINB. Probability is 0.0. We'll take it 0.10. Degree of freedom is n is given to be 23, so degree of freedom is 22. It's coming out to be 1.7174. 1.7174. So we have T tabulated, which is this value, is coming out to be 1.7174. 1.7174. That means our X bar is somewhat over here. So since our t calculated is greater than t tabulated, therefore we would say that sample is not giving up enough evidence to accept H naught, and therefore we reject H naught, stating that it has increased. The average size of farms has increased from 1997 significantly. So this is how we take up this question. Then moving on to one of the widely used application of chi-square in research methodology, that is chi-square analysis. So the test is applied when you create two categorical variables from a single population. It is used to determine whether there is significant association with the two variables or not. A chi-square statistic is a test that measures expectations compared to actual observed data. The data used in calculating a chi-square statistic must be random, raw, mutually exclusive, drawn from independent variables, and are drawn from a large enough sample. So the widely used application of chi-square is it is definitely a non-parametric test. So it is used for testing the association between two or more groups. We'll be taking up the chi-square test of association, and it is used to test how likely the observed distribution of data fit with the distribution that is expected. This is also called as goodness of fit test, which is being used to find whether the distribution is Poisson fitted, or whether the distribution fits well on binomial distribution, etc. So it is not meant to analyze parametric or continuous data. Then there is one more application that is called as test of homogeneity, which is related or which is similar to test of association only. Apart from this, chi-square is used for sigma square test also. So that is not an application, that is clear cut usage of chi-square. Then how does chi-square takes up into account? So we are taking up chi-square test of association or chi-square test of goodness of fit. Both works on this OI and EI phenomena, that is observed frequency and expected frequency phenomena. So we have chi-square statistic is most commonly used to evaluate the test of independence when using a cross tabulation method, that is a bivariate table. Cross tabulation presents the distribution of two categorical variables simultaneously with the intersections of the categories of the variables appearing in the cells of the table. Test of independence assesses whether an association exists between the two variables by comparing the observed pattern of responses in the cells to perform that would be expected if the variables were truly independent of each other. So, calculating the chi-square statistic and comparing it against the critical value is the test that we take up for analyzing the bivariate fitting or the test of association. Chi-square distribution allows a researcher to assess whether the observed cell counts are significantly different from the expected cell counts or not. So the calculation of chi-square is straightforward. The formula for chi-square is given by summation OI minus EI whole square divided by EI, where OI is basically the observed data, expected EI is the expected data. So we have the chi-square statistic as per the formula is based on the difference which is actually observed in data and what would be expected if there was no relationship between the two variables. So this is all about chi-square, but before taking up to limitations, let's have quick chi-square steps. Suppose that variable A has R levels and variable B has C levels. Then the null hypothesis states that knowing the level of variable A does not help you predict the level of variable B. That is, the variables are independent. So variable A and variable B are independent, and variable A and variable B are not independent. So this is the stating of hypothesis part in chi-square test. Then formulate an analysis plan. The analysis plan describes how to use sample data to accept or reject the null hypothesis. The plan should specify the following elements: significance level and the method that we are taking into consideration. This is so because, as per the method, the degree of freedom concept changes. Then analyze the sample data. Using sample data, find the degree of freedom, expected frequencies, test statistic, and the p-value associated with the test statistic. Degree of freedom is r minus 1 into c minus 1. Then we compute expected frequency on the basis of test of independence. That is number of elements in row and number of elements in column divided by n. Then we have test statistic is summation oi minus ei whole square divided by ei. And we compute the p-value, that is the probability value of the sample statistic, which is observing a sample statistic as extreme as the test statistic. We can use chi-square calculator, or basically the Excel or chi-square table, for computing the p-value. Then interpreting the results. So as per the findings, given the null hypothesis, the researcher rejects the null hypothesis if p-value is small. So typically involving p-value to the significance value and rejecting the null hypothesis when p-value is less than the significance level is the final interpretation or the concluding of the chi-square test. Then the limitations of chi-square analysis is definitely chi-square analysis is highly sensitive to sample size, because chi-square is a distribution which is being made from number of observations or degree of freedom only. As sample size increases, absolute difference becomes smaller and smaller proportion to of the expected value. What this means is that a reasonably strong association may not come up as significant if the sample size is small. And conversely, in large samples, we may find statistical significance when the findings are small and uninteresting. That is, the findings are not substantiated and are not significant, although they are statistically significant. Then chi-square is also sensitive to small frequencies. Generally, when the expected frequency of a cell is less than 5, we say chi-square can be erroneous in terms of conclusion. So the rule of thumb says that if any value is less than 5 and more than 20% of the expected values in the cells are less than 5, then chi-square should not be computed, and go for pooling if any one value is less than 5. Now, after doing chi-test, let's move on to ANOVA and its calculation. So ANOVA basically separates the variation in the data set in two parts: between groups and within groups. This holds for one-way ANOVA. For two-way ANOVA, it is between group, between blocks, and within group. These variations are called as sum of squares, which can be seen in the equations given below. So we have first variation, that is the between group variation. So the between group variation, as the name is suggesting, is calculated by comparing the mean of each group with the grand mean or the overall mean. So if x1 bar, x2 bar, x3 bars are the mean of groups, then variation between group is obtained by subtracting x1 bar minus x bar bar whole square and so on. Specifically, this is adding up the squares of differences between each group mean and the overall population mean multiplied with the sample size, because we take into account in this the concept of pooled variances. Then we then divide the sum of squares by the degree of freedom to get the mean sum of squares of error, or mean sum of squares of variation between the groups. And then the step 2 is basically variation within groups. So variation within groups can be computed by first calculating the total variation. Total variation is computed by taking into account the variation of each and every individual unit from the grand mean. Within group variation is the variation of each observation from its group mean, and the formula is S square group 1 into N group 1 minus 1 plus S square group 2, N group 2 minus 1 plus S square group 3, N group 3 minus 1, if we assume that there are three groups. So F is calculated by mean sum of squares divided by mean sum of squares between the groups divided by the residual or mean within group error. If the average difference between groups is similar to that within groups, then F ratio is about 1. As the average difference between groups becomes greater than the within group variation, then the F ratio becomes greater than 1. To obtain a p-value, it can be tested against F distribution of a random variable and the degree of freedom associated with the numerator and denominator of the ratio. The p-value is the probability of getting the F ratio or a greater one. So larger F ratio gives smaller p-values. So this was it. We have one-way ANOVA and two-way ANOVA. So majorly we take up one-way ANOVA. Then we have assumptions of ANOVA. ANOVA is normally the response is normally distributed. The variance is similar within different groups. The data points are independent. So these are the assumptions that are taken up before running ANOVA. Then ANOVA types, as we said, there are two main types. One-way ANOVA that compares levels or groups of a single factor based on single continuous response variable. So it's like y is equal to a plus bx sort of regression, one variable regression. Two-way ANOVA is like multiple regression. Two variables we are taking into account. So two-way ANOVA compares levels of two or more factors for mean differences on a single continuous response scale. In practice, one will see that ANOVA is more often used than two-way ANOVA because ANOVA takes into account the CPU time. Two-way ANOVA takes into account more CPU time, more complexity as compared to one-way ANOVA. But one-way ANOVA, two-way ANOVA, if we talk of in terms of variations, then two-way ANOVA gathers more variation. It is better model than one-way ANOVA. Then there is one more which is called as factorial ANOVA, which is taking into account the repetition or interaction between the two groups too. Then just to wind up concepts, we have a term called as ANCOVA. So ANCOVA definitely, as C is added, that C stands for the covariance. So like ANOVA, ANCOVA has a single continuous response variable, but unlike ANOVA, ANCOVA compares a response that is dependent variable by a factor and a continuous independent variable. For example, comparing test score by both level of education and number of hours spent during studying. So the term of the continuous independent variable, that is IV, is used in ANCOVA, that is also called as covariate. So with this, there are some links where you can take up the tests, you can read these tests and the calculations wherever was necessary we have shown up in the slides. So definitely taking into consideration the statistical analysis of the questionnaire is not a simple task, but Analyzing this way makes our research strong by supported facts and figures. So, with this, we conclude lesson 7 of research methodology. Wish you all a very, very happy learning.